Yo, welcome to Sig Slayers, the comic signature show, period. I'm Mike the Sig Slayer, chilling with Mark the Honorable Villain. What up, fam?
What's up, Mike? We got two guys that have done all your favorite comics. And when I say all, I mean they've done everything.
Everything. Joining us today, we have two comic book legends. We have the great Rob Leigh and the great Brad Anderson, here to talk about their greatest and their latest endeavor, Ghost Machine Productions. But before we chop it up with the crew, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and please comment. All right. Meat and potatoes time. Our next guests are two unsung heroes in the comic book industry. Mark is right. These two men have been a part of your favorite stories, especially if you're a DC fan like me. Let's roll the credits real quick. Sinestro Corps, check. Doomsday Clock, check. 52. DC Rebirth, Action Comics, and my favorite, the Three Jokers. Ladies and gentlemen of the Stash Land, we bring to you the one and only Brad Anderson and Rob Leigh from Ghost Machine. What's up, gentlemen? How are you guys doing?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good to be here. Thanks for having us.
We're going to just dive right on in. Rob Leigh, this is your first time joining us. This is Brad's second time joining us. And whenever we get a first time guest, we always like to do our comic book origin story. How did you get your first gig in pro comics? But more specifically, when did you decide to become a letterer?
Well, my first gig in comics was with DC. So I got hired as a freelance production artist. And this was 92. This was during it was a great time to be working, to get into the field, because the 90s, they were just hiring everybody. And at that particular time at DC, we were going through the death of Superman. So it was an exciting time for the company. This is also around the time that Image started up. So it was kind of a pivotal time in comic books. So I was a board artist. I'm doing lettering corrections, art corrections, things of that nature.
Who gave you that break?
Well, I called up the Cubert School. They said one of your classmates, guy by the name of Mike Sellers, was a good friend of mine, was working there. Mike later on went to be an editor. He was an inker. He was a letterer also. So I called Mike up and I said, can you get me in there so I can talk to somebody? So I talked to his boss, who had been his name was Rick Taylor. I believe Rick was in the first graduating class from Cubert's, around 76, 78, somewhere around there. So I started working that day as a production artist. And it was a lot of fun. Like I said, it was a great time. And I sat next to this guy who was a guy named Kenny, who I loved working with Kenny. But Kenny was a bit scatterbrained at times. And somehow between morning and after lunch, he lost a page of Deathstroke. And wow. the book had to go to press the next day. So editor Rob Simpson had seen enough of my art corrections that he was in a bind also. So he said, I got a Xerox of the pencils. Do you think you can ink this overnight and bring it back? And I said, yeah. So that was my first, my first freelance, artwork. And so I worked staff for a few years. I became the one of the production managers there, but I was also inking books full time while I was on staff there. So
when did you make the transition to letterer?
All right, so in 2003, DC was starting the in-house digital lettering department, and a guy by the name of Nick Napolitano, so he was starting this new department, and he needed bodies, and at that time, I was my hands kind of shot from years of being an inker. I've got repetitive stress injury, so I can't really hold a brush for any period of time anymore without it just going numb. So I needed to pivot. If I'm going to stay in the field, I had to pivot. I always liked lettering, and I quickly learned digital lettering, and I became the first member of that in-house department. Eventually became a supervisor, and after about 3 years, 3 years was about as much time as I can tolerate working in Manhattan, commuting 2 hours each way. So I tapped out, but I had a great relationship with the powers that be at DC, and they said, well, we'd like to continue having you work for us, and so I became a freelance letterer, and I've been doing that. So I've been lettering now for 21 years, in the business 32, lettering for 21.
One of the best in the business.
Both of you hail from the Cubert School.
Yeah.
What is the lesson you learned from the Cubert School that you still use today?
Well, how to meet a deadline, definitely, because even at the Cubert School, you're loaded down with assignments. So it's, I kind of learned right away, have a whiteboard, make sure all your due dates are kind of labeled, and then juggle what's priority. And also the biggest thing I loved about the Cubert School is because you were around other talent, and that really made you up your game, and it was inspiring seeing guys that were so good, oh man, why didn't I think of that? I love that about it. I love that kind of studio banter back and forth. And then now working with the guys in Ghost Machine, I get to see all that, the chicken scratch art all the way to the inks, and it's like I said, it's inspiring. It just really gets you motivated.
One of the things that Joe said early on really stuck with me, and he says, this is an art, but it's also a business. And, given an infinite amount of time, anybody can create a masterpiece. But our job as commercial artists, and commercial being the first word of that, is that you do the best job that you can do in the time that you have to do it. So so your reputation means a lot. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. And that's not just comic books. That's just, business. That's just life. Be as good as your word.
Okay.
Yeah, and I got a couple buddies there, that learned a lot of storytelling stuff. And I have one that went into animation. He's a producer for American Dad and Simpsons now. And then my roommate, he's a filmmaker in Norway, has a bunch of films out, great storyteller. Another good buddy of mine, he's a graphic design guy, works for a graphic design company. And so it's but all going to the school, you're exposed to different commercial art. And then you can kind of maybe I'm more interested in doing storyboard art, or maybe I want to go to animation. So, but it's definitely a commercial. That school really teaches you how to make a living out of doing artwork. You're just finding your little niche.
Rob, back in the day, Rob, letterers had to physically write on the comic book page, as you mentioned earlier. If you could take us through your process of lettering today for Ghost Machine, how does that even start?
Well, I mean, everything starts with the written word, right? It starts with the script. But before I can start working, I need the two components. I need the words, and I need the pictures. So I'll get the script from Geoff or from Peter Tomasi, and the art. Usually, I'm getting it from Brad. Brad will take the inked, the black and whites, and he'll format it. Sometimes I'll get pencils, directly from the artist, but you get the art first, and then it's you're reading the script, you drop the art into my template, so it sits where it needs to sit, and away we go. I usually I'll do a once over on the script, a quick read. Now we're using properties, stories that we're familiar with, so that there's not too many curveballs thrown at me. But say I'm doing a project for DC where I have to decide, does this character need a new look for their balloon? And we see that with Ghost Machine too, but usually I've established that by the first issue or two. And then, it's just telling the story. So I'm looking at the script, I'm looking at the acting, in the artwork, and then I'm making my decisions. How do I place my balloons, my captions to aid with the flow of the story? Everything I do, I'm doing with an eye that I'm the first reader, but it's all there to guide the reader to the story. The story's king, right? It's not just it's not Geoff's story, it's not Bryan's story, it's not Brad's story, it's not my story. It's all our stories. It's the story's the boss, and this is what we present to the reader. So everything is done with a thought to making their experience enjoyable.
Next question for you, Brad. Your work continues to set the standard in the superhero genre. Can you tell us who are your influences as a color artist?
Well, I don't have any direct influences. It's more of I try to expose myself to everything, like photography, painting, traditional painting, digital art, digital color, you name it, like sculpting, the old masters, like J.C. Leyendecker stuff. And I find when I first got on social media, I wasn't really sure. I'm like, oh, this is going to be weird, whatever. But then I just only started, like Twitter, for example, I only started following things art related or things comic related. And that's all I got bombarded with. It was all my algorithm was getting all these cool art stuff. So I was like, oh, I never would have seen some of this stuff if I never got on social media. And I love it for that. So I get to see all this really cool stuff. And on a daily basis too, you always see the new stuff, new comic colorists, covers, concept artists. There's some great, Mullins is like one of the best. Like I look at tons of his stuff. Just everything. Don't try to look at one specific thing, but try to expose yourself to everything. And then it helps with, how shadows fall on something, an object, backlighting, just a lot of cool stuff out there.
He raises a great point. If you're an aspiring comic book artist, look at stuff other than just comic books. When I was working in Manhattan and I'd walk to the office, I'm looking at Broadway posters. I'm looking at how signage is used in the street. I have an advertising background, so I've got everything that you experience goes into your bag of tricks, and then you make it into your own.
Other than that, Rob, did you look to any comic letters that inspired you, that were your senior, that you looked up to?
Yeah, Todd Klein was the it still is, what a hot shot he is. He really, a wealth of information, someone who has a real affection for type and for design. Certainly Richard Starkings, who revolutionized the industry. Guys like John Costanza, Ken Bruzenak, Willie Schubert. These are all guys that I liked. And that's one of the things I think that working in production in the early days kind of helped me, because we'd have to do corrections over all these different letterers. So you used to have to, be able to ape their style, and it all becomes part of your DNA, creatively.
Brad and Rob, man, you guys have a very prolific body of work back over at DC Comics. And before we pivot over to Ghost Machine stuff, I just want to take a moment to reflect back on your careers back at DC for a moment. Could you guys share some of your a highlight moment that you're proud of, a highlight project that you're proud of at DC?
Oh man, there's so many. I don't know. I can't.
What's coming to mind? What's floating to mind?
Well, the Doomsday Clock for sure was one of my favorite, just because it was Gary's art, but there was so much in the story. I think almost every DC character ever created was in that book. Like Geoff was finding the most obscure characters. Man might have appeared in one little tiny panel in the 50s or something, and he put it in the story. I loved it. I loved working on it. And then the New 52 stuff, I got to work on Action Comics #1 with Rags Morales. Was pretty cool. Just to have your name on, I'm actually working on Action Comics #1. That was pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know. I think Doomsday Clock's probably my all-time favorite there.
Rob, what about you? You've been a part of some of my favorite stories as well. Sinestro 4 War comes to mind, but a gang of other stuff. Green Lantern in general. But what's the moment that you're proud of over at DC?
Well, I had about 100-issue run on Jonah Hicks with with no interruptions, and I love the character. I liked working with Palmiotti and Justin Gray, but I liked it was like a personal challenge to be able to do so many issues with it. I got very protective of it. I'm like, nobody's going to do a fill-in on this. I'm going to, come hell or high water, I'm going to make this happen. And so I was able to do that. And also with, I don't know if you remember Wednesday Comics.
Of course.
So, yeah, so I got to do a Flash story for that. So that was Mark Chiarello, who's an amazing editor at DC at the time. And
he was the art director, right? Former art director.
Yeah, Mark just knew everybody. I mean, he really knows art inside and out. So when I got the phone call from him, it was like getting a phone call from Geoff when we were starting this up. So he was she was kind of setting up an all-star team. So you get invited to that. It was pretty amazing. Plus, it was working at such a large scale, like a newspaper style strip. And newspaper, comic strips are what got me into the business. So that kind of that's as close as I got to working on a newspaper strip.
That's awesome. I gotta say, my highlight moment with you, Rob, was this year in Philly when you recovered a bastard comic book of mine. That was great, man. Just for the people who don't know what that is, bastard comics are those smudges, those signature imperfections that happen on comic books. It happens from time to time when we don't let the ink dry and stuff like that. And the term comes from Game of Thrones. If you guys are Game of Thrones fans, all the bastards go to the Night's Watch. And so a lot of the books that get smudged have a short box full of just smudged, I have Todd McFarlane smudged signatures and all kind of craziness in my Night's Watch. But you, my friend, Rob Leigh, you have did the unthinkable. You resurrected a book, and I sat there and videotaped you do it with hand sanitizer. So you are, Houdini has nothing on Rob Leigh, man. You brought it back, man. You brought him back like Lazarus, man. So thank you.
So, you bet. Yeah, that was my Mr. Wizard moment. MacGyver.
So pivoting to Ghost Machine now, because I definitely want to spend some time and talk about Ghost Machine. This is a new imprint. You guys mentioned all-star lineup. You two are the main color artists and letterers for 2 universes so far in print. I know there's going to be more, but right now I think it's just Rook Exodus and the Unnamed universe, right, with Geiger and Redcoat, correct? So far up to date on the stands, we have 2, right? Am I correct?
Yes,
in that? So far,
yep.
So and further to come down the line. But take us through the mind, gentlemen, of creating universes from the ground up. Just from your standpoint, but we're going to start with the Rook Exodus universe. How do you get in the mindset of developing your work for Rook Exodus, Brad?
Well, it was a lot of discussion because Geoff and Jason, of course, talked the story and had the story figured out. And then when I talked to Jason about it, we kind of threw around the ideas of, having a theme color almost for the planet and actually throughout the story. And then it eventually evolves when we go to different locations. But there was kind of a feel that we wanted to have, and it was really atmospheric. So that was, I think when I first started the issue 1 was got to be almost 3 years ago. And so I did a few pages just to get to kind of show Jason, say, yeah, like, how about this? And he just loved it right away. So I looked up a lot of, photo reference and just kind of like desert scenes, stuff like that, movie stuff. But yeah, it was unique to get started. And then I think I was done the first issue, and then he went back and changed the Rook's costume, the helmet a bit. So we had to go and do a bunch of color corrections and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a unique situation. Not, if you're working on Superman or something like that, you're in a story arc. Well, you could always refer back to, years and years of stuff being done before. This is like, okay, like, let's get this right, and then we could use that as our stepping stone.
What about you, Rob?
Well, as a letterer, I don't have much to do with the world building of it. Yeah, and that particular project, that's been Jay's baby since I think he was a teenager, and that's an idea, concept that he brought to Ghost Machine, and then he and Geoff have taken it way to the next level. So what I was looking at when I looked at the art, now I've worked with Jay before on Three Jokers, but looking at the art on Rook Exodus, it just, to me, it harkened back to those really classic Sunday illustrative comic strips, Prince Valiant, Tarzan, Flash Gordon. So I kind of wanted to be a little evocative of that. So I wanted to choose a font that kind of harkened back to those days. Things like with the captions, I wanted to put a little rougher board, and that kind of is a nod to all the primal environment that we're in with all these animals, and how the planet almost seems to be reclaiming itself. So I read and watch.
I like that. Read and watch.
Is there anything different that you guys do with the unnamed universe?
Let's talk about Geiger for a second, because from what I'm told, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, because you guys were there for Geiger. So when Geiger came out, Ghost Machine was not like in conception, right? As far as like in the minds of the four of you, right? As far as Ghost Machine as we know it today. When Geiger 1 hit the stands, was there a Ghost Machine?
No.
It was coalescing. It was,
Well, I think we started Geiger, and then I think it was shortly after they talked about, Geoff talked about doing this.
I interviewed you right before Geiger came out. It was like a few months before Doomsday Clock was ending, and then Geiger was about to start. Volume 1 of Geiger, let's say that. Volume 1 of Geiger, because we have a new series of Geiger out now, right? And so basically what I'm getting to was, Brad, Geiger was kind of like a mini series, right? And then now we're in Ghost Machine, and we're expanding upon that. And then we have Redcoat that's kind of joined with Geiger in this kind of umbrella of the unnamed universe. How do you get started with Redcoat with Geiger?
Well, at this stage, I do them totally separate. Like, I have a separate mindset when I go into it, and that's on purpose. Like, I want to make sure they're not, until eventually, who knows? Like, if they ever are together, crossover, then might be something different. But right now, I want to make sure that when you look at Geiger, it's a Geiger book. And Redcoat, same thing. And a lot of it's like, especially with Redcoat, I'm going to treat his reds as kind of almost like a Superman's cape. You won't see a lot of red in the book, except you'll see always a clean red somewhere on the page, and just so he pops. And then same with Geiger. There's probably not going to be a lot of green stuff going on. It's going to be strictly for, the shots when he ignites and that kind of thing. But yeah, I try to keep them separate right now.
Okay, so guys, this is for all the homies out there, the Stash fam, all the people that are, big fans of the big two, right? Marvel and DC, right? People that are hesitant to migrate over. They see these names, people that they've loved for 20 something years. I mean, Rob Leigh, Geoff Johns, Francis Monopole, Brad Anderson. Tell them what they're sleeping on, guys.
Here's what you're getting from Ghost Machine. You're getting a group of creators who are exceedingly passionate about these projects. We're sharing each other's work. Brad alluded to it before with the signal chat that we have going on. We're like kids that are putting their artwork on the refrigerator, for the other kids in the family to see. We love this, we really do, and it just stokes us when we get to work in this environment with these people that we really like. We're doing these stories that we really like, and we amp each other up. And the end result are these comic books. And I think if the reader, I know if the readers check this stuff out, they're gonna really dig it. It's just a different level of passion, and I see this at the conventions. How excited, not just excited that the fans are for these stories, but they're excited for us, and we're excited for them. It's energy kind of going both ways, and it's really tremendous being part of such a thing. I mean, I think it's rare as hell.
Well, you got to keep in mind that, if you love these creators and all the work they've done the past, years, they're continuing to do the same thing. But right now, they're not restricted by any, other owned characters. They own these characters, so they can do whatever they want, and they're doing some really cool stuff. So when you unleash Geoff Johns or Jason Fabok to, okay, here you go, here's a character, do what you want, it's pretty incredible. You don't want to miss it.
On that same note, I wanted to ask, who does the trade dressing for Ghost Machine? Is that you, Rob?
No, that's Steve Blackwell. Okay. So he was just announced. He's been with us since the early days, since the beginning. But and he was just announced along with Danny Mickey and Andrew Curry as new, official members of the Ghost Machine. But Steve is a tremendously talented designer. He does our production work for us, but he's an artist, so we're really lucky to have him, because he's creating our face, he's creating what the public sees first.
All the Junkyard Joe stuff, and it just blew my mind. I'm like, wow. Especially now with all the hardcover stuff and the trades, he does incredible work. Yeah.
Let's talk about collaborators real quick. More specifically, Gary Frank. Brad, you talked about Doomsday Clock earlier. I feel Gary Frank is one of the top artists in the game, and people don't really talk about him enough. So I want to talk about Gary for a moment. You've worked with him for quite some time. Getting to work with Gary Frank, was there something that you had to understand or pick up in order to be firing on all cylinders, or to get that smoothness that you guys have today?
No, I think I'm a huge fan of Gary's. So I mean, it was pretty easy. Like when I get his pages, I'm just like geeking out over it's pretty crazy. Like I always tell him I feel bad for putting color on your art because it's so amazing black and white. So yeah, it was easy for me. It's just I've been working with him for so long too, and he's so comfortable with what I do. It's just it's a seamless, partnership. So when I get his scans, like he basically, scribbles in pencil and then he draws in ink. So I get his raw scan, so all that pencil work is there. So I zoom in and I got to clean all the pages, scale them, format them. But I always tell him, I said, I'm the luckiest guy. Like I get to zoom in and actually go over every aspect of his black and white line art, and it's just stunning, like the stuff he does.
So let's talk about Bryan Hitch and Redcoat. Tell us some of the most exciting things that you've seen from Bryan in the conceptual phase of Redcoat.
So the first batch of art you guys were seeing from Bryan. What came to mind?
Oh, well, he had this idea first off that he was going to do these wraparound covers. He goes, so I might as well do a wraparound for every cover. And I'm like, okay. And then he sends them to me, and I'm just, wow, okay, when am I going to find the time to do this with all this other stuff? But these epic, they're almost like movie posters, the covers he's doing, and they're just like stunning. And the same thing, I'll sit there and just stare at them for like an hour. And same thing, scale them, I'll clean them. And because there's a lot of blue line on his scan, so I take all that stuff out. And as I'm doing it, I'm thinking about what I'm going to do, or how I'm going to separate stuff, or where I'm going to put emphasis. And it's funny because I never really worked with Bryan before. I did a bunch of covers for him, Red Sonja covers, and I think I did a couple Thor covers, but never worked on a project. And I didn't know what he was going to be like, or how he's going to like what I'm going to do. And I didn't even know what I was going to do because it's such a different style. It's a little more hard edge. So I thought, well, how am I going to approach this? I don't want to go really soft and painterly next to like these hard, jagged folds of like Simon's jacket, for instance. So I just started doing what I thought would look cool, and it's fast for me too. Like I have to keep in mind my speed too, because I have deadlines, right? Yeah, and then I just showed him a few stuff and did a few covers, and he just loved it. So going into the actual series and the narrative interior pages wasn't really a big issue. It's just, okay, I'll just do what I want to do, and if there's changes, then I can make changes after. But he's been really awesome. He's a great guy too, so
yep.
makes it easier to work.
There's so much depth to his pages. There, so many layers, and I think when you read a Bryan Hitch,
separate those. That's the issue.
Yeah. Well, but I think reading a Bryan Hitch story is kind of like meeting Bryan Hitch. Bryan is a guy who likes his fine wine, and he likes some good food, and he likes savoring it. And I think that's how you approach his a Bryan Hitch comic book. You read it again, and then going really deep and really explore it on that third reading, and just look at what's going on there, and how it supports the environment, how it supports the story. And I think you're going to really get an even deeper appreciation for what he's putting into his pages.
And it's so awesome the way that Geoff and Bryan collaborate. Like,
oh yeah,
when we're at a convention or something, even when we're at dinner, they're talking about Redcoat and the story, and I think they must have over hundreds of issues already kind of plotted out, like knowing where the story is going to go. But it's really neat seeing those guys develop kind of story ideas, and it just blows my mind because I can't wait for you guys to see what's going to happen.
Nice alley-oop. I'm gonna take the alley-oop and dunk it right now, because I know that we're in the unnamed universe, and we're also in the Rook Exodus universe. But then we have something called High Street, right, coming out soon.
Yeah, there was an ash can that came out for a convention for the High Street stuff, black and white.
Yes.
Yeah, but I get pages, and I get all he sends the concept art and everything else. So yeah, and there's script and everything for it. I'm gonna have to start working on that coming up right away. It's just finding the time to get it in there. It's crazy.
So High Street. So I mean, obviously, without spoiling anything, was just excitement. I mean, this is Yvonne Reese, leaving DC. I know you were working with him on Beast World, Brad. I think that was the last thing he did before he left. Yep. And he's full throttle with Ghost Machine, and he was doing Titan stuff, right? Titans. Yep. He goes from Titans to High Street, man. What are we saying? Are you salivating for people to see what's being unleashed?
I tell you, I think it's the nicest work of his career. It is absolutely stunning. The story is unbelievable, and just the artwork. Like, he's one of my favorite artists of all time. When I got to work with him on the One Bad Day Ra's al Ghul story, and that was actually the first the first kind of hardcover or the first single issue trade that, or graphic novel that he's ever worked on.
Oh wow!
So I was like, oh really? Yeah, like he's never, and he's been doing it since he's 13 or 14, and that's the first time he's actually worked on a graphic novel. But anyway, yeah. So, but yeah, like him and Danny Mickey, like really seamless relationship. Like he just gives me the stuff and says, go nuts. Never any no. He just says, here, you do it. Like, you're the best. You go on. Like, he's the nicest guy in the world. When I see the page, I see it done. So it's just a matter of putting the hours in to get it to that point. But I already have it figured out what I'm going to do.
Yvonne is uncaged. You know, if you liked his work before, you know, there's no shackles. He's running wild out there, you know, and he's got all the freedom in the world, and he's taking advantage of it. You are really in for a treat.
A lot of fans liken the establishment of Ghost Machine to the formation of Image Comics, right? Because just the all-star group of people making this mass exodus away from the big two, you know, big talent doing their own thing. What are some of the challenges you guys face independently now?
Well, I mean, we're all driven. So in terms of doing work, it's not like anybody's, you know, like you have to prod anybody, you know. Everybody's a self-starter, so I don't worry about that. We're this is a well thought out endeavor. You know, we, aside from the, you know, those of us in the creative aspect, we have Jamie and Corey. We have Cotton out there, you know, working on behind the scenes there. Brian Cunningham. What's that? I'm sorry?
Cat.
You know, Rebecca. So they're all, we have, you know, that aspect. Those wheels are turning. So I'm not concerned about that at all. You know, we're not jumping into this blind. We're also not kids, you know. So we've been around for a while. So we're at a point, I would say, most of us in our lives where we don't just, you know, close your eyes and jump out of the plane and hope there's a parachute on the back there. You know, we're thinking things through. We're not flying by on the seat of our pants. So it's a business too, you know, and it's a business with a plan and with structure. So I'm confident that we're gonna really take this thing to the next level.
Everyone in Ghost Machine is a professional, has been a professional, and not only just the creators, but everyone behind the scenes, like people running the company, utmost professional. They know what they're doing. Like, we all have a ton of trust for each other. You know, I tell the guys, hey, you do your thing and I'll worry about what I have to get done, and everyone just focuses on what they have to do. And yeah, it's great. And Geoff knows everybody. Like, he's worked with everyone to some degree. And I trust Geoff more than anything. So yeah, if he says, you know, these are the guys, then I'm like, yes, thank you.
Yeah, these are all people who've been successful throughout their careers. So why assume any differently now that we're all put together? Last
question. It's about Geoff Johns real quick. And I know you guys are strapped for time. Geoff Johns, so far, has written everything that's in print for Ghost Machine thus far with Redcoat, Geiger. And so my question to you guys have been working with Geoff for a long time. Some of his, you know, longest collaborators, you know, if you put the pencilers aside, right? So according to you two individually, what do you guys think is Geoff Johns' superpower as a creator? Because I mean, this dude has written, I think, the second most pages in DC history. I don't know if you guys know that. What do you guys think is his superpower?
Geoff plays real well with other people. You know, he has a respect for other opinions. So he's very open-minded. There's no ego when it, you know, he's not hyper possessive about his projects, and he not only seems to accept input, but he looks for it, you know, from other people. So that takes a lot of confidence to be able to do that.
Awesome.
Yeah, he encourages collaboration. Like, he wants to hear what you have to say or your thoughts on something. It's never, okay, do this. it's all about creating the best product, and in order to do that, you need everyone on board, right? Everyone's opinion and creative aspect too. So yeah, he's so nice. Like, it's crazy. Like, you know, any issues, you just phone him up, just talk to him. He's just the best. Yeah.
Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you want the fans to know about?
If you go to ghostmachinepro.com, we have this store where you can get all, like, there's tons. I have a list in my shopping cart. I got to order, like, hats and tons of stuff. So definitely go to ghostmachinepro.com. Yeah, so you can get a ton of, like, your favorite characters, shirts, hoodies, hats, mugs, but you name it, it's on there. It's unbelievable.
Ghostmachinepro.com. You guys can get all the information about all the releases, merch, appearances, everything. Ghostmachinepro.com. Brad, Rob, thank you guys so much for joining us. As you guys always know, you always have a home here on the Sig Slayers station. So thank you guys, and please come again.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that's all for our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe and hit the like button. This is Sig Slayers. I'm Mike, speaking for Mark, Rob, Leigh, and Brad Anderson. We are out. Peace!
Sig Slayers.